Hi. I needed your acting skills, buddy. You did great. Welcome back and Happy New Year. Oh, you want to be in the video now? Okay. You didn't like being on camera before, but now you like it. Got it. Welcome back and Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Bruce. Can't do that. Calm down. This won't take long, okay? Now, hey, you made your appearance. You can't steal the whole video. Thank you. As you can see, the environment today is a little different. Honestly, this whole video is going to be a little different. I mentioned in my last video that we officially made it further in the artist way this time than the first time that I tried it, and that is true. But I had read most of that chapter before, not all of it, so I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to say in the video. This chapter, though, was entirely new to me, start to finish, and it really hit in ways that I wasn't expecting. This is actually my third time trying to make this video, and one of the challenges, you know, there's the side activities and the additional things you're supposed to do with each chapter, and one of the side activities or the challenges for this week was to not only take yourself on an artist date, but to go somewhere special, make a day trip out of it. And I kept putting it off because honestly, before reading this chapter, I was feeling really good about my progression through the artist way. In fact, there were several times that I journaled, I don't know that I'm still the artist way's intended audience. I feel good about my creative journey and where my career is headed. And so I kind of just stopped doing the activities, and I kept putting off the day trip because I felt like I didn't need it. I felt like it was a distraction. I felt like, why put the time and effort into something when what I'm doing is already working? But each time that I tried to make this video, it just wasn't clicking. I couldn't find ways to articulate everything that this chapter meant to me and things that it hit on in my life. So I decided, why not do the day trip? Let's pack up Bruce, let's drive 3 hours to a mountain, hike a little bit, and then at the top, try the video again. So here we are. I think this video has the potential to become a little rambly, but we're gonna get there together. The title of this week's chapter is Recovering a Sense of Integrity. I decided to look up the word integrity. Of course, contextually, I know what it means, but I wanted to see what the definition actually holds. And according to Merriam-Webster, integrity is being virtuous and true to oneself or others, or becoming whole. I think both of those things are incredibly applicable to this chapter. And I also think it's the key to why I struggled with making this video. I think in each of my past videos, I've been able to make the video from a finished point in each individual journey. If you think of each chapter as a journey of something I'm supposed to learn, I was always making the video at the end. This video is at the end too, but it presented so many ideas and so many challenges that I'm still learning in the process of this chapter. And so rather than coming at the video from a finished point, I'm coming at it in the middle. I'm still learning, I'm still on the journey. And that is integrity, that is honesty. It may not be wholeness yet, but that's what we're working toward, and that's what the chapter is about. I feel like I've talked about it before, and I know it says it somewhere in the book, but Julia Cameron talks about not being surprised if things start to just click and align in your life as you go through this book. Could call it serendipity, like the last video. But this particular week, too many things lined up, and that's part of what shook me and threw me off rhythm for making these videos. Christmas looked a little different this year with me being in Atlanta and my friends and family being back home in Texas. I'm used to spending Christmas with my immediate family, my extended family, usually friends, then maybe a party or two, and I really didn't get any of that this year. My parents, God bless them, were so gracious and caring and flew all the way to Atlanta to spend about 3 days with me for Christmas. which I was so thankful for. But it still wasn't the Christmas that I'm used to. When people would ask me, "Oh, how was your Christmas?" the answer I found myself giving a lot was, "It was okay." The following Sunday, I attended church, and the message hit me like a freight train. I know I'm technically not supposed to share my morning pages with you, but I feel like I have to share this one. Yesterday's message felt tailor-made for me. I knew I needed to pay close attention within the first couple of sentences. The pastor opened by saying, "Good morning, church. How are we doing today?" A murmured response from the crowd. I bet most of you had a similar response. When someone asks us how we're doing, our response is usually what? I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay. But we never really are okay, are we? The message that followed was profoundly simple. It was about centering yourself and centering your life around Jesus. And then I decided to open Julia Cameron's book. And the very first paragraph starts talking about real feelings versus official feelings. It says real feelings are a truth, and they're often secret or guarded. They're what we hold close to the chest, what we consider vulnerability. Official feelings are what we allow to be on public display, what we deem acceptable to the general public, what society deems as acceptable. She goes on to start defining the phrase, "I'm okay," or "I feel okay." She says that when you use that phrase, it's too broad. It's non-specific. Do you feel resigned, accepting, comfortable, detached, numb, tolerant, pleased? What does it mean? For a lot of creative people, and maybe just people in general, okay often signals a loss of some kind. It's a phrase of acceptance. It's a phrase of accepting a reality that maybe didn't live up to your expectations. I had every intention of filming this entire video on top of this beautiful mountain, but as you can see, I have rain moving in on me any minute, and I just saw lightning. So we're gonna pack up and we'll finish this video at home. So anyway, like I was saying, obviously there became a recurring theme here. Am I okay? And what does that mean? She has a quote in the book that says, "The root of a successful creative recovery is the commitment to stop saying it's okay, when in fact, it's something else entirely." So I went to my morning pages and I gave myself permission to not be okay. I wrote 9 pages of honesty, of integrity in my morning pages. And you know what? The next day, I felt pretty good. She says in this chapter, confronting the truth of okay statements will point out the need for a course adjustment. The process of identifying self involves loss as well as gain. We discover boundaries, and boundaries create clarity, and clarity creates change. And we're stepping into a new year. So I said, change is exactly what I need. And obviously, after 9 pages of not being okay, maybe there's more here to explore. So if change is what I need and clarity is what leads to change, how do I get clarity? The first thing that came to mind was to step away from social media. I grew up in the day and age of when social media was just becoming and people were still trying to figure out what it was. And I remember always hearing this warning of, don't believe everything you see online. Don't believe your perception of someone else's reality through the lens of social media, because social media is so curated. I used to hear that a lot. And I think as time went on and social media became more and more normal, more and more just part of society, I think we lost that warning. But the warning hasn't changed. The warning is still there. Social media is not a fair comparison. And it's a comparison that I fall into a lot. I scroll and I see other actors, other artists, and I think I should be there. I should be doing that too. and it starts to diminish my own self-worth and what I think of myself. And I know that about me. So under this challenge of what does it mean to be okay, I said, let's figure that out. But let's let that journey be between me, myself, and God. No social media, no distractions, no comparisons. In my downtime throughout the week, rather than pulling out my phone and just mindlessly scrolling Instagram, let's sit, let's decide, why are we bored? Why are we stalling? What could you be doing in this moment? And you know what? I found so much creativity in those moments because I stepped away from the doom scrolling, because I stepped away from the distraction. While I would love to take credit for this idea, it was not completely original. It is something that she suggests in this chapter. She calls it a reading deprivation. This book is a little old. The message is still true. She wants you to step away from distractions. It's just that at the time of writing this, distractions were picking up a good book rather than scrolling social media. I am an avid reader. I'm reading through the Jack Reacher series right now, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. But honestly, with the transition of the new year and everything that was going on, I wasn't reading that much anyway, but I still wanted to implement her challenge. So I was already feeling called to step away from social media, but then it was there in the book too. Again, alignment, serendipity. I said, looks like it's meant to be. And I stepped away for almost 2 weeks. During that time away from social media, I filled my time with a lot of productive things. I cleaned out a shed that had been needed to clean out for 6 months. I redecorated a wall. It didn't get finished, but I started redecorating a wall. I created a vision board. I started writing a new script. I did a lot of things that I had been putting off. And what I realized was that there is so much more time in the day than what I give myself credit for. I feel like, oh, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that. But when you stop and realize just how much time you spend wasting, there's so much more time to explore and to create. And being honest with yourself, not only about how you spend your time, but how you spend your creativity, how you spend your mental energy, is integrity with yourself. And the fact that I'm putting that out here right now on the internet is me having integrity with you and letting you know that, this was sort of a wake up call for me. And if you've known me before, or if you know me in the future and I claim to not have time to take care of something, it may be time to examine how I'm spending my in between moments. So, what happens in that reading deprivation, in that social media deprivation, in those quiet in between moments with no distractions? We've all heard the phrase left alone with your own thoughts, but there's a lot more truth in that than what I would have imagined. When you are left alone with your own thoughts, you start to learn a lot about yourself and you start to encounter yourself in ways that you didn't expect, because there's nothing else to do than just examine your own thoughts. I think a lot of us associate being left alone with your own thoughts to nighttime or first of the day, when your brain isn't functioning fully. But middle of the day, when you've been working, when you've been creating, when you've been enjoying your hobbies, and then you have that lull, that in between where you've got 20 minutes between finishing this project and starting a new one, or finishing something and going to work, and you're like, oh, well, 20 minutes, time to scroll Instagram, Facebook, whatever. What happens in those 20 minutes? You can accomplish so much. Even if you're not accomplishing something, you're encountering something. You're encountering yourself. Julia Cameron writes, art lies in the moment of encounter. We meet our truth and we meet ourselves. We meet ourselves and we meet our self-expression. She quotes Chekhov, who says, if you want to work on your art, you must work on your life. In order to have self-expression, you must first have a self to express. And going into the new year, that's really something that I'm focused on and I'm working toward. I've always been a firm believer that the best kind of art flows from human experience and human emotion. But if you're constantly tapping out of life and checking out and distracting yourself, you're missing not only emotions with other people or other experiences with other people, but the emotions within yourself. And that is where true art lies. That is, as she said in other chapters, your well for creativity, especially as an actor. Every emotion that you display on screen or on stage has to come from something raw, something human. And if you're constantly distracting yourself from that, you have no creative well to draw on. She writes in this chapter, people frequently believe the creative life is grounded in fantasy. The more difficult truth is that creativity is grounded in reality, in the particular, the focused, the well-observed, or specifically imagined. But shifting your creative focus from fantasy to reality isn't an easy change, and sometimes it involves pain. She says, change often involves pain. We may crave illusions or choose to be oblivious to avoid the pain, but pain is necessary. It calls back to that old saying, no pain, no gain. And it's true. Change can be hard. Letting go of bad habits creatively or even just in real life is hard. But she says, shifts in taste and perception frequently accompany shifts in identity. One of the clearest signals that something healthy is afoot is the impulse to weed out, sort through, and discard old belongings. By tossing out the old and unworkable, we make way for the new and suitable. So it's important to shift your focus from fantasy to reality, to sitting in those moments, to connecting with yourself, but don't expect it to come without a cost. No matter how you're spending those in between moments or what your perception of creativity was before, in order to gain something new or learn something new, it requires letting something old go. Not only can that be challenging, but it can also be lonely. And that's something that I struggle with a lot, especially being here in a new state away from my friends and family. It's part of what made Christmas so hard. Being alone isn't something I'm comfortable with. But she writes, until we experience the freedom of solitude, we cannot connect authentically. And that's in those in between moments. What are you avoiding? And that's what I'm okay is about. It's an avoidance statement. What are you avoiding? Where are you not connecting authentically with yourself? She says, once we connect authentically, we become original because we become something specific, an origin from which creative work flows. And that's the goal. That's the whole goal of this journey. That's the whole goal of a creative person, is to create art, to create work that flows naturally and leaves a great impact. You want to create art that is impactful and memorable, but you can't create original work until you have an original you, until you have an original self to draw from. It was a relatively short chapter, but one that had so much impact and had such big philosophies to convey. Are you okay? Stop avoiding your true feelings. Stop avoiding your true self. Use that true self to create true self-expression. The last thing she says in the chapter that jumped out at me was, we must become proficient in noting how we are feeling. How are you feeling? And what do you make of that? What we usually make of that is art. So going into the new year, what I want to focus on as a creative, as an actor, as a writer, as a person who connects with other people, is checking in, understanding, and identifying. Am I okay? Why? Or why not? And how does that impact me? How does it impact my art overall? Because I want my art to be original. I want my art to be creative. I want my art to have integrity. But in order to have integrity, it must first be true to myself. And being true to myself is knowing that sometimes it's okay to not be okay.